Welcome to Outlaw Woodworking. Today's video is for entertainment purposes only. Safety with any table saw is a big deal, so always be careful with everything you do. Always follow the safety instructions. Today we're doing an upgrade to the shop. As you can see, we've upgraded to the SAWSTOP 3 horsepower professional series. We added it's a 52-inch addition to it. So this part right here is 52, and we opted to have the router lift or the router extension on it with the fence, which I really love. And then we used the table that they gave us. They actually gave us this extra table that was supposed to go in here, and I repurposed this for an outfeed table. And the nice thing about melamine is it's kind of smooth, so everything glides on top of it really nice. Anyway, we'll do an unboxing and assembly of this. I'll tell you how long it takes to put it together, and then I'll tell you what I think of it at the end. Let's get started.
There he goes, it's a working man. He's trying to make a living any way he can, and he'll break his back for $1 or $2. Oh, there ain't no shame in what he do. Oh, work it out.
Right off the bat, I can tell you there was a lot of boxes and a lot of packages with a lot of nuts and bolts, but everything was labeled really well. And I actually, I've had to assemble a lot of different equipment before, and a lot of times the directions and the parts are, not very good. These packages are packaged really well. Now right here I have the industrial base. I bought the industrial base with it. It came fully assembled. Actually, all you need to do with it is make sure you put it on the right way, and I actually put it on backwards. Now if you look at it right here, when I spin it around, I'll spin it right here, you can tell the shelf side should have gone to the left, and so that's what I needed to do right there. Actually, I end up coming back in and spinning it around. Now the main instructions are actually behind the motor cover, just in case you missed that. At first, when I first opened it up, I didn't know where those main instructions were. Here I am turning it around where I think it should be. The actual base didn't really say to put it that way, but when I looked at it, it looked like, balance-wise, it looked better that way. Right here, I'm over in my wood shop kind of figuring out where I want to put it and start reading instructions. And basically everything is it's pretty legit as far as the nut and bolt layout, all the instruction manuals. They're in really good, they're really good. Right here I'm starting, this is the first of the assembly after the base. And there really wasn't anything to the mobile base. You just set it in there. It has two screw holes on the base that you can put in there, but it wasn't really a big deal. Now here I am putting on both handles. They both have an Allen key and then a stop, and those are pretty easy to do. The next step is to actually, I believe the next thing is to pull out all the cardboard and stuff and go ahead and put the dust collection boot on there. And then the next thing they say to do is to put this cover on. And I actually put the pin backwards when I first did it, but then I just spun it around and it was perfect. After this cover, the next thing you want to do is, you just go down the list. I mean, if you buy one of these, you're going to go down the list. You're not going to listen to me. But it's really oily, and you want to, get all that stuff wiped down right away, because that oil will get all over the place. Now because I'm working alone, I decided to use a couple straight edges and basically use that to set this this first extension. These are heavy cast iron extensions, so basically I'm just going to use straight edges and some clamps to basically get these started. And these have 4 bolts on each side, and basically you just kind of start threading them through there. And the next thing you're going to do, you're going to actually do both sides. get them on both sides, and then you're going to want to use a straight edge across this whole thing. And that takes a little, I used a rubber mallet here and there to basically kind of fudge them up and down until I was happy with how level they were. Once I got them to where I wanted, and I tightened it all up real tight, and then I could take off those straight edges. The next thing was basically once I figured out that these were really nice and level, and I was using actually a razor blade and a straight edge to check these joints coming across there. The next thing was to put these big rails on here, and the rails. Oh, I'm sorry. The next thing was to put this electric switch on, and that's actually it's a tight spot where this electric switch is. You kind of have to use a socket head Allen to put that in, because a T-handle Allen wrench won't fit up in there. And right there you can see I put on the little tool for hanging your wrenches. And then this is another little tool down below for actually that one down below was for holding that thing I had in my hand right there, which was the protected cover guide that has also a shop vac hose on it, which is pretty nice. All the instructions in here were really, really nice. There's the T. Next this is the big deal. These are heavy. You got to be very careful with these actually, because they are oily and they'll slip off the table and fall on the floor. I watched another video of a guy assembling the SAWSTOP, and he actually dropped the big bar, the one that goes on last, which is a big square tube. He dropped it right on his foot. It didn't look like that felt very, very good. Anyway, they show you exactly how to put these in, and you kind of just go through the motion and just start bolting them in. Now I started off off the right way, but I ended up spinning this saw around because I wanted the router to be on the right side of my shop. So I ended up turning this whole thing around after I got these bolted on there. But like I said, the instructions are really good. There was a couple times when, actually the only instructions I didn't see in this whole thing was in my router lift. So I got the router table extension for my JESM router lift, and then I ordered the dust box to go around the router, and the only thing that didn't come with instructions was that dust box. And I think if you were to buy if you were to buy their router lift with their dust shoe box, then you would have got the instructions probably. Now the one thing about this, so this is a 24-inch insert right here that goes into that table, and the only thing I didn't like about it was I wish it was a cast iron one right in that spot, so that you're connecting the cast iron router table to the cast iron saw. I think that would have been a little better, but I mean, you'll see it when it's done, or you already saw it a little bit in the beginning, but it still looks just amazing. I'm super, guys that have had these all their life are, this is basically my retirement present to myself. Plus I'm building the house, and it kind of pays for it to use this to do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in the house. But yeah, it's a little kind of a gift to myself. It's pretty amazing saw. But yeah, the instructions, you can see they're all like laminated instructions, hard, they're binders of just really good detailed instructions. So I didn't really make any bad mistakes on it. The only thing that I did wrong, but it wasn't really their fault, it was my fault, is the JESM router, the holes don't match their cast iron router table. But I wanted to use the SAWSTOP I wanted to use the SAWSTOP router extension. So basically the JESM router, I knew it would fit right in there perfectly. I just needed to modify the holes a little bit. Now right here, I think that I'm using these legs, but really I'm not supposed to use these legs because the router table came with its own legs that fit differently. And I didn't know that when I first put this cast iron table over there. I'm like, hey, that's not working right. But then the more I looked at it, I realized that the router table itself had its own legs. So I took these legs off, and the router table, it actually has mounts that are different. That's the only thing about it. The mounts are different. Once I looked at the directions on the router table, it was just a matter of finding the right mounts and bolting them to the legs. And then basically you flip over the cast iron router table extension, you flip it over and you basically bolt them right on there. Now, when I first bolted them on there, I actually had them wrong again because I wanted to switch. Originally, I thought, oh, I'll put it where I want the switch because the router table switch mounts to those legs. See the switch right there? But I realized that it couldn't go on the way I wanted it to. It needed to go on a certain way because the way the legs mount on there, it had to be on a certain way. And then, of course, the dust box bolts to the bottom of this. But right now I just switched them around, tightened up the bolts, and then bolted them onto the bottom of this router table, and then it was time to put it in. I think this, I don't know why, but I think the router table extension gets me the most excited. I use a router a lot. Like when I make drawers, which I'm going to do a drawer video coming up, but when I make drawers, a lot of times lately I've been making them on my CNC. But when I used to have my assembly table where I had the JESM router left in there and I had a fence on it, I would just put in a half inch downcut spiral bit in my JESM router lift, and then when I was making drawers, I could do the dado, depending on what size the bottoms were. I usually put half-inch bottoms. I know a lot of guys use quarter-inch, but I use half-inch bottoms. So I would run a half-inch dado using my router, and instead of putting a dado blade in the table saw, I could just use my router and run it right through there, and it really did a nice job. So I'm kind of excited to have that again. I've kind of missed having my router to do all kinds of things, but yeah, that's one of them. So right here, I'm actually putting on the main square tube that that you mount your fence on, your main table saw fence. And you can see right there. Now there's some adjustments to this. There's a lot of instructions as far as how to adjust it. There's actually they give you an Allen key for it. They give you a couple different Allen keys. Now there's two Allen fittings. So if you lift up the fence, there's a couple underneath, and you just what you want to do is measure each side of your fence all the way, both sides, and then make your adjustments. But just follow the instructions in the manual, and you'll come out really good. Now running along the rail, that's a pretty easy one right there. You can see me adjusting that actually right now. You just lift it up, adjust it, and then I used a credit card just to put in between there. Basically, it's like 1/8 of an inch gap. And then the fence front to back, what I used a dial indicator to basically, you can see right here, I'm putting the dial indicator in the T-track, and then I adjust it back and forth. And I had to do a little adjusting here and there till I got it right where I wanted. And then I'll actually do the same thing later on with the blade. But yeah, I think a dial indicator on a T-track is really a necessity if you're making a lot of adjustments on your saw. Yeah, right here the saw part is getting close to being done. Now, there's a lot of instructions on the installing your saw blade, and a very important part about that is they give you a gapping tool and they show you how to gap it. Now, when I put the saw blade in and got it all tight, the gap was perfect. So I didn't need to do any adjusting on that brake. But if you, let's say you put in a different saw blade or something, chances are you might have to adjust that. So it's a good thing to learn how to change that brake. And I actually bought an extra brake. Hopefully I'll never have to use it though, because they're like $100 a piece. Now right here I'm putting my JESM router lift in there, and I see right off the bat, and I knew this was going to happen, the 4 holes in the JESM router don't line up with the 4 holes in that cast iron thing. So all I had to do was basically drill them out, and then I got some. I ended up grinding the heads of these stainless steel washers down a little bit just to make sure that it was really flush with my router lift. You don't really want anything. You want everything really, really smooth when you're running any material across there. So I didn't want it hitting the bolts. So, and then basically on the JESM router lift, you have, there must be 10 little Allen head screws to adjust the flushness on the cast iron table. So, and that really helps to make sure that everything's nice and flush with that. And that part actually, that went smoother than I thought as far as getting that to fit in this cast. I knew the dimension of the outside was the same, but I wasn't sure if it would, be able to bolt in there very good. But it ended up bolting in there really not very. It wasn't too bad. I just needed 4 washers on the bottom with some lock nuts, and it worked perfect. Right here, the fence they give you for this, I was really impressed. It's a really nice fence. It's got some, those are sacrificial, but they're nice ones. They're melamine sacrificial faces, and they basically slide right in on that T-track, and it's got some wing nuts on the back, and then this piece that I just slid on there, that's a little safety cover that slides down on the front. And then you have, now this is where there was no instructions. Now I looked all through all these books, and no instructions for this dust box, for the router lift dust box. But however, if you look at it, you really didn't need. I mean, it's got a bunch of small bolts that basically put all the sides together, and then it's got 8 bolts that bolt the box to the bottom of the JESM router, or to the bottom of the cast iron router extension, and everything fit perfectly. There was actually no problems at all. All the bolts, nuts, washers, everything fit really well. And the instructions, like I said, I didn't have instructions on this, but everything else on the saw I had instructions on. And right there you can see I've mounted part of it, the hose, on there, and then I'm just bolting it up to the bottom of the cast iron table. And that was pretty simple. It's really starting to look like something, actually. Now right here, so it gave me this extra piece, and I thought, well, I could make, and it gave me a couple extra legs, so I thought, well, I'll make a little outfeed table, because I didn't order one, so, and it's nice to have one, so I went ahead and made that outfeed table. Now right here, I'm excited because everything's hooked up. I've got power and everything, and I'm basically getting my router dialed in to make drawers. And basically, I'm just cutting a little dado, a little 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch deep dado for my drawers. And I do a couple sample pieces trying out this fence, and I was really happy with everything the way it turned out. It's just going to be amazing to have this stuff in my shop. Okay, the saw, I love the saw. I've only had it for a few days now, and I've been using the router table and the saw, making drawers. and the router extension is just a game changer. I love the saw. I've never had a cabinet saw, so to have this one instead of starting out with, I've always, like I said, I've always had the small little job site saws, the DeWalt and the Hitachi, and to have something like this where you're up at height to cut things is fantastic. And to have this, I'll probably end up, like I said, I'll probably end up making this whole thing into an outfeed table, but this is really fantastic. And the instructions were the best I've seen, as good as anybody as far as assembling any kind of equipment. The instructions were extremely good, and if you just follow them, you'll do fine. I'll have to count how many hours it took to do this. I did a few hours. I would say I did a few hours each day. Probably took less than a day to do the whole thing. And I just took my time and went through each page and kind of learned about the saw as far as adjusting it and stuff. But yeah, big addition to the shop. It's just going to be great. I can't wait to get started. I got a lot of cabinets to make for this new house I'm building, and a lot of drawers and stuff to do inside the workshop, so it's going to be great. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, like the video. I'll see you next time. Later.
There he goes, it's a working man.